welcome to Spotlight, the interview show on RT. I'm Al Grinov, and today my guest on the program is Richard Stallman. The computer world is divided in two confronting camps with two totally different philosophies. On the one side are the corporations which sell programs and gain big bucks. On the other are the people who believe software must be free. The former obviously dominates the market, yet free software products are starting to beat commercial ones. How can this happen? Why isn't the market law always working properly in the software world? We're asking the number one person in the free software movement, a true computer genius who has always confronted businessmen like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Spotlight gives you a unique opportunity to hear your questions answered directly by Richard Stallman, a programmer turned philosopher.
Richard Stallman says the purpose of his career is to campaign for users' rights. Back in the 70s, he was a prodigy programmer and a part of the newly born hacker community. He could have continued in a software developer career, but an attempt to introduce a totally free operating system made him a true philosopher. The launch of the GNU project kick-started the free software movement. It fights for running, changing and redistributing computer programs without charge. Thanks to Richard Stallman and his friends, most commercial software has free alternatives. Stallman himself lives an ascetic life, lectures and promotes his philosophy around the globe.
Hello, Richard. Welcome to the show, and thank you very much for being with us. Well, first of all, when you were listening to that intro, you said that it's a mistake to confront free software and commercial software, right?
Right.
Why?
Because these are two unrelated questions. A program is free or proprietary depending on whether the users control the program or the program controls the users. Whether the program is commercial or not, that's a totally different question. Mm-hmm. It's commercial if it's developed as part of a business. Mm-hmm. There are businesses that develop free software. And there are individuals that make proprietary software. It isn't necessarily commercial. Also, free software means free as in freedom. It's not a matter of price. Free software is often available gratis, but not necessarily. Mm-hmm. You can sell copies. You're free to sell copies. Mm-hmm. And proprietary software, non-free software, is sometimes gratis. Mm-hmm. For instance, Flash Player is gratis proprietary software. Mm-hmm. It's not free software, and it has malicious features. So it subjugates the users and abuses them, but it's gratis, if you like that.
So producing and working on free software can be a business. I mean,
yes, it is.
It can be a money-making.
People are paid to do this. Mm-hmm. Companies do this. Mm-hmm. There are people who have small businesses where they develop solutions for clients, and they improve as they go the free software that they use in these solutions.
I think you partly answered the question that we got on Facebook from Mr. Adrian Jowett, who asks, who can afford to work for free?
Well, actually, lots of people do. There are many people who volunteer for causes and many people who have hobbies. So developing free software is a sort of hobby for many people, and it's a political cause for many people. But the crucial thing is there is lots of free software. If somebody believes a simple-minded economic theory that says there can't be free software, well, that theory must be false. It's like someone who has a theory saying satellites can't stay up. Well, they do. Look up at the moon one day and you realize satellites can stay up. So that theory must be wrong. Well, now, you might want to ask how people develop free software. That's an interesting question. But to say, I don't believe it could exist when it does exist, that's just a false belief.
Well, if God wanted people to fly, he would have given them wings, sure?
Well, there's no God, so it's not really a meaningful question. But basically, for software originally was frequently free back in the 1950s. As soon as there was more than one computer that was an identical model and that the same programs would run on, and there were various users doing things that sometimes had an overlap, they started sharing software between them. And free software was still common around 1970 when I entered the field. But during the 70s, it was driven out by user subjugating proprietary software. Mm-hmm. But I had the good fortune to work in a place where the software was free. So I experienced life in freedom. But then that community died in 1982 approximately, and I saw myself facing a life of proprietary software, and it was ugly, it was disgusting. So I said, I'm going to dedicate all my efforts to creating another free software community to replace the one that was gone.
Another question we got from Facebook came from Nick Elliott, and here's what he writes. What motivated you to pioneer the free software movement when everybody else thought this was insane?
Well, I had already...
And you're not a believer.
I had already experienced life in a free software community.
You just said that, yeah.
So I knew that it was possible and that it was a good way of life. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think that money could compensate for the ugliness of life that I would have with proprietary software. I didn't want to be subjugated, and I didn't want to subjugate others. In fact, it made me morally ashamed, the idea. It was morally wrong, in my view. So the only thing that was worth doing with my skill as a programmer was creating a free world.
Richard, you say, I quote, "It will take many steps and many years to reach a world in which it is normal for software users to have freedom," end quote. Do you think the existing economic system should be changed to help your dreams come true?
Or that's not necessary. The free software movement was started in a capitalist society and has always existed in a capitalist society. There's no incompatibility between free software and capitalism. Now, extreme capitalism, the empire of the corporations, which is what we have since the globalization and the unfair trade treaties of the 90s, that's a different story. I don't know if anything decent in society can coexist with extreme capitalism. Extreme capitalism means that in each area of life, the businesses interested in that area rule society, control the government, and in particular, the oil and fossil fuel companies control energy policy, and they are driving us towards the kind of disaster where we won't have food to eat. It was only a year and a half ago in Russia that the harvest burned up due to an extreme heat event. Of course, global heating makes those happen more frequently, as well as creating floods and droughts and many kinds of disasters. So we're heading for total disaster if we don't put an end to extreme capitalism and reestablish democracy. But this doesn't mean eliminating capitalism. Just to eliminate the empire of the corporations doesn't mean we stop having businesses. So we don't need to stop having businesses. We don't need to get rid of capitalism. Free software combines capitalist ideas and socialist ideas and anarchist ideas. It doesn't fit into any one of those camps.
Richard, another discussion that's going on in the internet, in the world in general, was sparkled by WikiLeaks. Do you think that the public knowledge, in-depth public knowledge of governmental secrets, diplomatic secrets, is good? Is it justified? Is there a line?
It's necessary.
Is there a line that should be drawn?
Especially now that our governments betray the citizens. When the empire of the corporations imposes its governments of occupation, these governments exist to keep the public under control of business. They may have democratic form, but they don't really carry out democracy.
Can I say that the best way to control the public is free software?
No, because
in the internet.
Free software doesn't control the public.
It does.
No, it's the opposite. Free software is software that the users control. In order for the users to have control over the programs they use and have control over the computing they do with it, they need certain freedoms. These 4 essential freedoms are the criterion for whether a program is free. If the users don't have control over the program, then the program controls the users. And of course, the developer controls the program, and that means that this non-free program is an instrument of power.
You know, what my dad always taught me, and I was raised in a capitalist society in England and France with my parents, he said, listen, as long as you can afford to buy things, you're free. But as soon as you start getting things for free, you're hooked.
But free software doesn't mean it's for free. So you've made a misunderstanding here. But in this case, he is assuming, your father was assuming that when you buy something, you control it.
Yeah.
And that used to be true. And often it still is true, but not with software. If you buy or even get gratis a copy of a proprietary program, you don't control what it does. It's designed frequently to mistreat you. It's very common for users of proprietary software to have malicious software.
Listen,
let me tell you some examples. Microsoft Windows has known malicious features. It has features to spy on the user, features to restrict the user. These are called digital handcuffs. And it has known backdoors with which Microsoft, for instance, can change anything remotely. macOS has known digital handcuffs to restrict the user. The recent Apple products, the iThings, these have known spy features, known digital handcuffs, the nastiest ever, and a known backdoor. Flash Player, which is gratis but not free software, has surveillance feature and digital handcuffs. Most cellular phones will transmit your location on remote command. That's a surveillance feature and a backdoor together.
The best thing to control you is your credit card. I mean,
well, exactly. Well, that's why I normally buy things only with cash.
Listen,
but the point is that non-free software, because a corporation, typically it's a corporation, has control over the users through this program, it uses that power to abuse them. It puts in intentional malicious features. How can we protect ourselves? Free software is the only known defense.
Says Richard Stallman, founder of the free software movement. Spotlight will be back shortly after a break, so stay with us. We'll continue in a minute or so. Welcome back to Spotlight. I am Al Grinov, and just a reminder that my guest on the show today is Richard Stallman, founder of the free software movement. Richard, we've got dozens of questions from our viewers, and here's one from a man called Casey and Andre. He put a question to you on our website. What can the free software movement do to convince people to use free software instead of buying heavily marketed proprietary products? Because most people still believe that Windows or Mac, well, it works better than free software.
Well, they don't realize that it's full of malicious features. It's basically an instrument to give someone else power over them, and this power is being abused constantly. So what I do to try to show people why they should move to freedom-respecting free software is I don't talk about practical things, mere convenience. Because, free software in some cases is convenient, in some cases less so. Just as proprietary software in some cases is convenient, in some cases less so. They're not all incompetent. I'm not going to claim that. But they never respect your freedom. And once you have come to understand this, then you'll realize that it's worth making sacrifices to gain control over the things that you live your life with. The same control that your father assumed he would have when he bought something.
Listen, you're an idealist. How can you consider yourself to be free if you have a computer? If you have a computer, you're hooked. If you live in Europe, you're hooked on Russian gas because you're hooked on electricity.
Sorry.
So you're not free. You're not free from the Russians.
You're stretching the word free to include a lot more issues.
You too. You're stretching it too.
I'm using it in a very specific way, meaning freedom is having control over your own life. It doesn't mean you can get anything you want.
If your gas is supplied by the Russians, your life is controlled by the Russians.
Well, actually, no. What it means is Western Europe is to some extent vulnerable to threats from Russia. But after all, it's an interdependent world to some extent. But that doesn't mean an individual person in Western Europe doesn't have freedom.
Are you married?
No, I'm not.
I am, and I don't want to be free.
Well, but again, that's a different issue.
I want to be interdependent, you see?
But that's different. You see, freedom doesn't mean that you have no social relationships. It doesn't mean you're an island. What it means is nobody is controlling you and making you do this and making you not do that. Now, in a free society, people generally have their homes where they own things, and they can do with those things what they want to do. Of course, there are things where you affect others, where you have to respect their rights, but you have a sort of sphere of your own freedom around you, but not if you're using a computer with proprietary software, because there, the developer, the owner of the program, controls everything.
Mr. Stallman, what's your opinion on the GNU Linux-based national operating system funded and co-financed by the government?
Which government?
Well, government bodies.
Any government.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, GNU is the name of the operating system I started in 1983.
Yeah.
It's pronounced GNU. Linux is a kernel. It's one program that we use with the system. That was the one piece that we hadn't developed, and Mr. Torvalds provided one. So GNU/Linux is the combination. It's basically GNU with Linux. So this is a complete operating system. Now, in fact, it's normally not funded by governments, but we're happy to have government help in improving it. So some pieces have been funded by governments.
Nothing wrong about it.
And government agencies must insist on using only free software for the sake of the computing sovereignty of the state. If a state agency uses a non-free program, that means a private entity has control over the state's computing. That must not be.
Okay, commenting on the death of Steve Jobs, you're quoted to say, "I'm not glad he's dead, but I'm glad he's gone." Well, I think the same thing was said about the mayor of Chicago, about his
Something similar, yes.
Yes, something similar.
I tried to quote that. I didn't quote it exactly right.
Yeah.
I posted a correction.
Well, what was wrong with him? You mean the ideology?
Steve Jobs figured out how to build computers that were prisons, jails for the user, and how to make them stylish and chic.
Which makes him a genius. Which does make him a genius.
It made him an evil genius.
Yeah.
He did harm to the world because he convinced people to rush to stores saying, "Put the handcuffs on me, please." And that is extremely harmful. That's what we fight against.
So does that mean that like a Motorola phone is better than an iPhone?
I'm not sure. I don't think it is.
What kind of phone do you use? You use
I have
an iPhone?
no mobile phone.
You don't have a mobile phone.
Right, because all mobile phones are surveillance and tracking devices.
What's wrong about you're so
What's wrong
obsessed with
about being
surveillance?
surveilled all
I'm
the
not spying
time?
for anybody, even for Mossad.
Sorry.
I don't care.
I do care because I don't want Big Brother to know all about me or all about you.
Well, Big Brother
I'm
doesn't
a
have
dissident.
enough money. Big Brother doesn't have enough money to spy on everybody who has a mobile.
With mobile phones, it's automatic.
He will start spying on you, when you start doing something wrong.
No, not whether you do something wrong. That's assuming the government is a good guy. Remember, we're talking about governments of occupation that support the empire and whose purpose is to keep the people in line. They sabotage protests.
I witnessed a couple of governments comprised of good guys, and they never survived more than 6 months.
Well, I don't know. That's not the point. The point is that I reject the assumption that we should want the government to have more power. We're in a state that has too much power right now. That's not the way things should be. The U.S. Senate just passed a law saying that even American citizens should be sent to Guantanamo, given no legal representation. It's an attack on fundamental human rights. So I don't want that government to have any more knowledge of anybody than we can prevent it from having.
Let's go on with questions from the audience.
So that's why I don't have a mobile phone. It's not that my movements are a big secret. It's not that I actually am concerned whether they would know where I'm going. But I'm against any system whereby this state can see where everyone has gone.
Good. Another one from the audience. Wouldn't widespread widespread adoption of open source code programs make the public more vulnerable to hackers who would be able to analyze the code and find its weaknesses?
Well, first of all, I'm not in favor of open source. Open source is the name of a philosophy that rejects my views. So I am not in favor of any. I don't talk about open source except to say why I disagree with it. If you want to cross that out and replace free software, then I could answer the question. But then there's another problem with that question. It assumes that hackers are people who are trying to hurt you. Hacking means playful cleverness. And computers are very useful for if you want to be playfully clever, but they're not required. If hacking is
playful cleverness, then governing is competent cleverness.
No. People have misunderstood the word hacker since around 1982. I'm a hacker. I'm proud to say I'm a hacker, which means I practice playful cleverness in a lot of ways. It generally has nothing to do with computer security. It's a mistake to use the word hacker to mean breaking computer security. I call that cracking, and the people who do it are crackers. So the question is, if you use free software, are you more vulnerable to cracking? And the answer is no. Empirically, our software has better quality, and you are not more vulnerable. We found out just a week ago that there was a bug in iTunes, a security hole that Apple knew about for years and only announced a fix a week ago. And in the meantime, they think that this might have been used by governments and others to break into people's computers and take control of them. Well, that's not free software, you know.
Christopher Calderon asks us on Facebook, asks you, what do you think of social networks like Facebook acting so secretive in their finances and very secretive in their privacy policy?
Well, these are two different questions. Social networking is one question and Facebook is another.
So Facebook isn't social networking?
Well, it's one particular case. Social networking in the abstract, I don't have anything against that. I don't do it because it's not convenient for me. But if it's convenient for you, do it. However, Facebook is very nasty. You should unfriend Facebook today. You should never touch it because Facebook does systematic surveillance of people, even non-Facebook users. If you visit a page that shows a like button of Facebook, Facebook knows you visited that page. Well, we're developing something that's going to cause these like buttons not to show up so that Facebook won't know where you went. But Facebook does other nasty things like Facebook, if you're a Facebook user, Facebook would use your face in paid advertisements without asking you. So and there are many other bad things about Facebook. Okay. So you shouldn't touch that. But a social networking site can be ethical.
A question from a user nicknamed Bartholomew. He asks, you are known as being very wary of publication of personal data on the internet, but what's your take on the problem of false online identity in order to deceive people, the so-called sock puppets?
I think that's bad, but I don't think anything can be done about it, because the kind of surveillance system that would be necessary to prevent sock puppets would be tyranny.
Thank you.
I'd rather live with sock puppets.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us. It was really interesting to talk to you. Thanks. And just a reminder that Richard Stallman was my guest on the show. He's the software freedom activist. And that's it for now from all of us here. If you want to have yourself spotlight or have someone in mind who you think I should interview next time, just drop me a line at algorithm@rttv.ru, and let's keep the show interactive. Spotlight will be back with more first-hand comments on what's going on in and outside Russia. Until then, stay on RT and take care. Thank you. Thank you.